Cases of cholera linked to Cyclone Idai has risen sharply to 139, all of them in the devastated port city of Beira. Thousands more are being treated for diarrhea, an early symptom of cholera, which has so far killed at least 2 people. The World Health Organization says its first objective is to control the outbreak. It's awaiting nearly 1 million doses of cholera vaccine, which will be administered next week. The cyclone killed more than 450 people, battering not only Mozambique but also neighbouring Malawi and Zimbabwe.
There are 5 confirmed cholera cases. These are lab-confirmed cholera cases. After that, we have to treat every case of diarrhoea as a suspected cholera. So I cannot at this point give you a definitive number of cases because I know people will want to know that. I cannot at this point give you a definitive number. What I can tell you is the actions that we are currently taking in order to address this problem. 1. There are a number of cholera treatment centres being set up around the province. 9 centres are in the process of being set up or are already operational. There is a vaccination campaign which will start next week. We have 900,000 doses of oral cholera vaccine which are coming in on Monday, and we will start a vaccination campaign as soon as possible next week. The Ministry of Health are planning to start this on Wednesday.
Our senior reporter Njanji Chauke was in Mozambique for a few days. He now joins us in the studio. Njanji, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
You've had quite a harrowing time there, I believe. Give us an update on how things are in Mozambique.
Yes, just being there in Mozambique, covering the aftermath of Cyclone Idai, it was quite shocking, the experiences of the people that have been in the epicenter, in the eye of this storm. You'll recall that in the year 2000, Mozambique went through the same fate. So it was a country, or at least a region, that was still trying to recover from that incident of the year 2000. Most of the communities that have been affected are rural communities that are very much reliant on subsistence farming. It's their livelihood. All their livelihood has been literally swept away. I mean, we had harrowing stories of how a mother with 3 children were clinging on treetops. People, as they go to the treetops, the snakes are also running away, trying to get away from the rising waters.
So they climb up the trees?
They climb up the trees, and hence most of the people that were treated by the doctors that were with, they also had snake bites as well. It was not just the mosquitoes, the snake bites. You are dealing with the adverse weather conditions, the hot sun, the waterborne diseases that the World Health Organization is dealing with as we speak. You saw in that clip, as from next week, Wednesday, they're targeting to start a major campaign to vaccinate in excess of 900,000 people.
So now we've also seen roads and bridges have been damaged and washed away. How bad is the damage to the infrastructure in the country?
With any natural disaster of this magnitude, these things happen. I mean, if you think of the speed at which cyclones are traveling on the ocean surface, we're talking about speeds that are traveled by jets or aircraft. So as soon as they made landfall, we're talking about speeds of up to 160 kilometers. So you can imagine the impact is quite massive. And then I think it also speaks to the issue of building resilient structures. When we flew over the area, we witnessed that most of the people are staying in very humble homes. These are built of timber, a few zincs on top, plastic. These are not
simple structures.
These are not strong structures. So as Africa, some of the sections in Africa were really not building resilient structures. So when there is a disaster of this magnitude, hence we find more people losing their lives. So I think going forward, the UN will be and African governments, they will be focusing in on these issues of disaster risk reduction.
Now we've seen international aid being sent in by various countries. Is there enough aid being sent to the affected areas?
It can never be enough. One of the major challenges that they are facing is how to transport this aid, because they have to do drop-offs, and I know that the South African National Defence Force was at the forefront. Yes. In terms of the delivery of the aid. They had 2 Oryxes that were there since day one. Yeah, they've been assisting with the drop-offs, but it can never be enough. Some of the remote areas when we were there had not even been reached as yet. It was interesting to also see how a disaster of this magnitude can bring communities together. Yes. A group of farmers who are doing business here in South Africa and Mozambique had also formed an association, and they've been assisting communities in those affected areas in terms of distributing the aid. I just want to
interrupt you there. These are pictures that you've taken of whilst you were there in Mozambique. Would you like to talk us through some of them? What were the contexts? What, you know?
Yeah, these are some of the photos. You can see the gift of the givers volunteers treating some of the patients. Most people have suffered cuts from the debris, from the zinc. And then you can see some of the structures there that have been blown away by the heavy wind. One of the sniffer dogs. These pictures were also taken in Zimbabwe, because here we're dealing about a disaster that affected 3 countries, Zimbabwe, Malawi and Mozambique. So Gift of the Givers had deployed in excess of 55 medics, you know, that have been working in these 3 countries. They've been treating the patients. They've been doing search and rescue. In Zimbabwe, we know that the people that are still buried in the mud, so they're trying to do search and recovery as we speak.
Yes, you talked about Gift of the Givers. I mean, you went along with them. What sort of help or assistance are they giving?
Yes, they've deployed or at least distributed in excess of over 50 tons in relief aid. This comprises
basic food.
High-end, basic foodstuffs, water, medication. You know that malaria is a big issue in Mozambique, even if before this disaster. So hence we saw them deploying such aid there. They've been there since day one, and then the question that many people have been raising is the sustainability of it, because some of the food, if it's not taken to the people as fast as possible, it can rot. It can start rotting.
That's right. It can decay.
So
there also has to be a methodical handing over of the goods, because otherwise you'd end up with lawlessness, etc.
Yeah, in some of the areas where we went with Gift of the Givers, where we've been dropping off the aid, we saw how desperate communities were even trying to storm the SANDF helicopter.
Exactly.
You know, because people have been hungry for days. Clinging on treetops, sitting on rooftops, you know, without food, you know, without water. For days. They cannot go into the water. There are hippopotamuses, there are crocodiles, you know, so it was a situation critical.
And what is being done for those people who have been displaced?
Those people that have been displaced, I think the most important thing right now is to give them food, is to treat them, is to make sure that they are in good health. And I think going forward, what we saw is that they've been put in some of the camps there. But after the camps, obviously, they have to be relocated. But these are subsistence farmers. Definitely people will be wanting to go back to their homes. You know, their livelihoods having been swept away, they have to start afresh.
Pick up the pieces.
Yeah, to pick up the pieces and move on with their lives.
Now, what is the process like for vaccinations?
Vaccination, they are expecting 900,000 doses of cholera vaccines that will be arriving in the country early next week. As from Wednesday, we are likely to see people being vaccinated, because we're talking about cholera here, we're talking about malaria, we're talking about typhoid. You know, these waterborne diseases are a problem, because some of the people, they died during impact when the cyclone landfall. Yeah. But this cyclone, it has a domino effect because when people get sick because they're being bitten by mosquitoes or because of waterborne diseases, people still die at a later stage. So it has that domino effect.
I know there's utter devastation, that communities have been displaced, people have lost their livelihoods. It's going to take a hell of a long time for things to return to normal. What is your estimation as to when things will begin to, some normalcy will return to their lives?
Mahendra, I would love to say tomorrow, but it's not possible. I mean, you know what happened in 2000, and then arriving there in Mozambique, the roads are still bad. I mean, if you look at the road linking Beira to the local airport there, the road is still bad. So Mozambique is a country that was still trying to recover from that disaster as we speak. Another interesting aspect is that this week we saw, or say in the past 3 weeks, we saw South Africans, the government, individuals and businesses here locally opening their hearts and their wallets in excess of 135 million rand was 2 days ago donated to the government of Mozambique.
From South Africans?
Yes. That delegation was led by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, who was accompanied by the Motsepe couple, Patrice Motsepe and Dr. Precious Moloi Motsepe, who were there to bring this donation from South Africans and from South African, from South African businesses as well. So Mozambique is a very strategic partner for South Africa. We know what happened during the struggle. It played host to a lot of South African people. So I think South Africans, some of us, when we look at our roots, we come from there. For instance, myself, whenever I go to Mozambique, it's like going back home because my great-grandfathers come from the Gaza region in Mozambique. Those where our roots are next to between Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So it's home. So we have a role to play indeed.
And of course, it has a special place in your heart as well.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. Our SABC senior reporter Njanji Chauke talking to us about his experiences in Mozambique after the cyclone. Well, moving on now, British Prime Minister Theresa May will